Hello everyone, this is David from Automotive Press, and really excited to do another video, not just about the Land Cruiser that's massively leaked, but also about the 2022 Toyota Tundra, because the two share the same platform. And because they both share the exact same brand new TNGA-F platform, that means they will also share important components like the engine, the transmission, and then later on the hybrid system as well. So there's a lot that we can learn about the 2022 Toyota Tundra from the 2022 Toyota Land Cruiser. So let me tell you everything that we know about the new Land Cruiser, from which we can learn about the new Tundra as well. And on the side note, I also want to point out that Andre from TFL and I have just completed another exciting podcast in their TFL Talk channel. That should be out in a couple of days or so. So keep an eye on that because the last one was massively popular. So we hope to repeat the same interesting story for you, and that should be out in a couple of days. Now I know that the last few days there has already been a number of photos leaked out there about the 2022 Land Cruiser, but would you believe there are even more leaks that just came out? Now the interesting thing is that these are not pre-production SUVs. These are actual final versions of the 300 series Land Cruiser, which is a 2022 version. These are not coming out of factory as prototypes or pre-production, but they're actually getting ready to be shipped to some other foreign countries. These are in shipping compound, and they have the actual distribution ready wrappings on the hood and on the top of the roof and so forth. So these are the final versions of the Land Cruiser, and it's been a long coming, right? Because we've been seeing a lot of spy photos and renderings over the last few months or so. So we finally get to see the final version, and then I'm going to also tell you about the final specification, because as many of you guys know, I was born and raised in Japan, although I grew up in the US and Canada, but that means I am fluently bilingual in Japanese and English, and so there has been a lot of information from Japan about the final spec of the Land Cruiser. And then unfortunately there are other YouTubers that are also telling this story, but they've got the story a bit wrong because they're, I guess, using Google Translate and doesn't quite come out correctly. So I will tell you the exact correct specification and all of the accurate information about the 2022 Land Cruiser, which also apply to the exciting 2022 Toyota Tundra. Now, if you recall, I have already been talking about the Land Cruiser for a while because we were able to get some really interesting information from a variety of different sources, including schematic diagrams. I don't know why some people call this blueprint. It's not blueprint, by the way. That's a really old term that we used to use way back in the engineering days when we were actually using sheet of paper that were blue in color. But anyway, so these schematic diagrams came out very recently, and then it was followed by an actual photos. So I'm going to take you straight to the source. There has been a number of Instagrammers that have leaked these photos, but I'm going to take you to this one here, which is called Land Cruiser Updates, and I'll walk you through exactly what this is telling us. So in terms of the actual leaked photos and videos, I give full credit to this Instagrammer, but I want to point out that these photos and the videos were taken in a shipping compound in Japan. Now, in case you didn't know, the Land Cruisers are built in Tara factory in Japan, about an hour away from the Nagoya city. That's where the Toyota head office is. I've been very fortunate that I have been to the Tara factory several times, and it's a very special factory because in that plant they produce not just the Land Cruiser, but also the Lexus LX, the Lexus GX, and the 4Runner as well. So it is definitely a dedicated factory for a larger SUV. In this case, basically all SUVs that are using the new TNGA-F platform. Now, the reason why I know these Land Cruisers are the final versions and not pre-production is because of the type of the wrapping they use on these SUVs to protect the paint, and also I can tell that even the wheels are covered up in plastic. So these are ready to go, and because it takes a couple months to go to any overseas locations, what I suspect is that these are being shipped to either Australia or to Middle East or other parts of the Asia to be launched over there in a few months' time. So these are definitely the final production versions, and it's really fascinating because with these videos you can see a variety of different colors as well. Now what you're seeing now is a Lexus LX, but don't get confused, that's the current version. There will be a new Lexus LX that will be based on the Land Cruiser, but that's not coming out at least until late this year, most likely early next year. So those photos have not been leaked yet. But so here you can see a black color, you can see a sort of maroon wine red color, and as well, of course, there's lots of white and silvers out there, and it shows that most of the leaked rendering from before are actually quite accurate. But here's a really good photo. This is, you can tell it's one of the different trim levels of Land Cruisers. There is going to be GX, AX, VX, ZX, and then at the flagship sport performance model called the GR-S. And you can see right here, these two models are two different trim models because the headlight is slightly different. One has the daytime running lights, and the other one has a slightly different version of that. So this one here, I believe, is the ZX, which is a flagship model. You can tell by the chrome wheels and so forth, because I have the full spec in front of me, which I'll show you in a second. Here's a gray one, once again with a slightly different trim level. There has been lots of misinformation about these trim levels, so let me just clarify right off the bat. So this is the correct version. There is another English version that's floating around on the net, but that one is incorrect. I don't know who translated it, but there's mistakes and errors in there. Again, I have an automotive engineering background and I speak Japanese, so I took the original Japanese spec sheet, which is legit, that was released into the dealer network, and then I've correctly translated the spec sheet. And then I'll upload these into my website, automotivepress.com, so you can download the actual PDF file. But what I can tell you is that there are 5 different versions of the Land Cruiser, starting with the GX, which is the bottom entry level, all the way to GR-S. So I'm not going to go through every single information here, but let me point out some interesting things. First of all, in terms of the powertrain, there will be both the 3.5 twin-turbo V6 engine that we have all been talking about. So that twin-turbo V6 displacing 3,444 cc is exactly the same one we're going to get in the 2022 Tundras. So for those of you who were still hoping that Toyota will bring the V8 to the Tundra lineup after all, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen because they're not doing it for Land Cruiser, and the specification is final. But the other thing to keep in mind is that the twin turbo is going to be tweaked and will be somewhat different than the version that's being used in the Lexus LS. We don't have the final numbers yet, but I estimate about 410 horsepower. I know you're hearing 420 as a number out there from a variety of different sources, but that's a PS, which is a metric format, and so the English format or SAE rating for the engine will be slightly different. So I estimate 410 horsepower, maybe about 420 foot-pounds of torque. And then the specification for the Land Cruiser also reveals a V6 turbo diesel displacing 3.3 liters. We will not get that in North America, and we will not get that in the Tundra. Who knows, maybe in a few years' time, Toyota might introduce that. We don't know that, but we will definitely not get it for next 2 to 3 years. But it is being offered in the 22 Land Cruiser in the 2 top trim levels. And interesting enough, there's a 7 and a 5 passenger version, but only the top GRS and the ZX have both the 7 and the 5 passenger versions. The rest are all 7 passengers. And then the GRS, which is something that we've all been talking about, will also be available in both turbo diesel and the gas engine, and it is the flagship in terms of performance. Now, before you get too excited, it's called GR-S, which stands for GR Sport, and so this is like the the Audi S-Line version, and so it's not the true RS version of the Audi, for example. So this is not in the same league as the GR Supra, GR Yaris. and so forth. So please don't get too excited. Unfortunately, the GR-S trim level for the Land Cruiser is actually mostly cosmetic, with some modification to the suspension, tuning, even the steering feel. But the engine should be exactly same as the other model, so it's not a faster SUV. It should handle slightly differently, and of course, cosmetically speaking, the exterior will change to have more performance-oriented parts, and a grille will be different as well. So those are changes. This is the best car rendering that we have from a Japanese car magazine, which, by the way, has been pretty accurate. Their rendering has been the most accurate so far, so we can trust that GRS version of the Land Cruiser, which no one seems to have a leaked photo yet, will look something like this. Other interesting tidbit is that the GRS will have the next generation kinetic dynamic suspension system, or as most of us know as KDSS, compared to adaptive vehicle suspension system AVS for the ZX, which is a luxury trim level, and then the rest of the lineup, VX, AX, and GX, have the normal suspension system. There will be also standard differential lock on the GRS, but none of the other models have it. And that's also front and back actually, so that's pretty exciting. And then the GRS has 18-inch matte gray aluminum wheels compared to a 20-inch for the ZX, and then the rest of the lineup also gets 18-inch. So I won't go into the rest of the detail here, but interesting to note that the front grille will look different from the GRS compared to ZX, and then the lower trim models, which is the VX, AX, and GX, will all have a same front grille. So the one that we're seeing now, I think we have two different front design that we can see in these leaked photos. What we're seeing is the top of the line ZX, which is a luxury version, and then the rest of the sort of the normal or standard Land Cruiser front design. So we can see the two. What we don't see is a GRS, the sport performance version, because I think Toyota will not bring that one out right away. There might be a little bit of a delay. Which, by the way, brings to the topic of exactly when is it being released officially. So what I have and what I've noted from talking to a number of different people is that July 1st appears to be the date for the launch of the 2022 Land Cruiser in Japan. That's the official launch for the gasoline engine, followed by July 19th for the turbo diesel engine models. And then the reason why they're doing this is because August is the official 70th anniversary timing for the Land Cruiser. So they want to release all of the information in July so that come August they can have a big celebration for the Land Cruiser. So that's the timing. And of course, most of you guys know Toyota discontinued the Land Cruiser for North America, so we're not getting it for sure in 2022. Would we get it, the following year in 23? That's very, very possible. Maybe you guys can put in a comment below that you want this back in North America, and if enough people show interest, much like what they've done with the V8 engine, the Lexus IS, they might just bring back the Land Cruiser. So now comparing this to the Tundra, because Tundra is not sold in Japan, you can assume that none of these trim models will apply to the Tundra. So we're not going to get a GRS or GR versions of the Tundra or any of these other nomenclature like the ZX and VX. Tundra will stick to its traditional naming scheme, which is like the TRD Off-Road and TRD Sport and Limited and Platinum, SR, SR5, and hopefully not too far away, we will get the TRD Pro. By the way, coming back to the engine lineup, the 3.5 liter twin turbo engine, which is called the V35A-FTS engine, that is from the Lexus LS. I have recently driven the Lexus LS with that exact same engine, and I share my experience with that in previous videos, so please go take a look. I know that a lot of people have been commenting that how could I possibly compare driving a Lexus LS with the Tundra, even though it has the same engine and actually the same transmission. And the answer is very simple. There's only so much engineers can do to modify the feel of the engine. So yes, the car will feel completely different. You cannot compare the Tundra to the Lexus LS, but the way engine revs, the way the engine feels, the way the engine's torque comes through the system, and the way it performs in terms of refinement and smoothness, and how the transmission shift through its 10 speed with the engine will be, those kind of stuff will be very similar to what will happen in Tundra. So as a formal automotive evaluation engineer and with extensive experience in development and engineering of cars, I can very easily figure out what the Tundra's engine will feel like by driving the Lexus LS. So that's something that you might want to go and watch after this video. And 10-speed automatic transmission was also very smooth and completely refined on the LS. So I expect a similar feel with different gearing ratio, of course, for the Tundra. Just to finish off the conversation on the 22 Land Cruiser though, it is now 4950 millimeter long. It is slightly bigger for the ZX and the GR-S models because their front design is slightly different. So it is just a tiny bit bigger than previous model, and the width is more or less the same at 1980 millimeter. Height is slightly lower for the new Land Cruiser. I think the previous one was too tall for some underground parking, so they lowered it slightly to 1870 millimeter, but the wheelbase is basically the same at 2850 millimeters. So there has been a lot of information on things like color choices and the interior. Also, the interior has at the flagship level a 12.3-inch infotainment system, but we're not going to get like an iPad style, Tesla style huge infotainment systems. We're going to still get a standard Toyota version of the system, which is nothing wrong with that, along with things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The hybrid version is clearly not in the current spec that was released to the dealership, which means we are not getting the hybrid for 22 model year. What I'm hearing is that the hybrid version will be about 1 year later. So sometime next year we will get the hybrid version for the Land Cruiser, and same timing for the Tundra. So maybe 1 year after the Tundra comes out, likely there will be a hybrid version as well. I'm hearing though also rumor that it may not be a full hybrid, but it could just be a mild hybrid. A mild hybrid means that it's not fully functional as a hybrid car, but instead when you first lift off the gas from a stop sign, instead of engine coming on from the start-stop technology, the motor will come on and move the car forward so that you have a smooth transition. And once the truck, SUV or the car picks up speed, then the engine will kick in. So that's how the mild hybrid works. It provides a really smooth start from a stop position, but not designed to be fully hybrid mode throughout its driving range. So those are some really interesting details about the Land Cruiser. Most of them will apply to the Tundra in terms of the engine, the powertrain, the transmission, and even the fact that Land Cruiser has a 12.3 inches infotainment system. Interior wise, that means the top of the line Tundra will also have a 12.3 inches. And so a lot of the leaks from the interior of the Land Cruiser, or at least the components of it, should be a good sign of what we will see in the Tundra. And also that means that we will also get physical buttons and knobs, which is what we're seeing in Land Cruiser. So some really interesting news out of Japan. Come July, this is going to be a full release, and I do have a number of friends and family still in Japan. So in addition to seeing a release from Toyota, I'm going to get some of my network to go and see it in action in real life, and send us some photos and videos from there. So keep an eye out for that. And then coming back to the Tundra stories, everything is pointing out to June 17th as the first potential sneak peek of the 2022 Toyota Tundra. I believe that the dealer network, the dealer principal and managers will get a glimpse of it, which means hopefully that we will also have some access to that sneak peek. And then, which means a couple of weeks later, there will be a public intro. So in the same fashion as the Land Cruiser, I expect by end of June, we will finally see the full spec photos and videos of the 2022 Toyota Tundra. And so that's all we have for now. Lots of information about the Land Cruiser, which also applies to the Tundra. And as I will continue to give you guys more updates about both vehicles as we get closer and closer to the launch date. But for now, I'm going to sign off because there's so many other stories to share with you. And once again, keep an eye out for that TFL podcast coming up very soon as well. Thank you so much, all of you, for listening and watching. Really looking forward to continuing this conversation about future Toyotas and other trucks and cars with you. So I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.